I first heard poetry when I was 9 years old. I waited for 71 years before I printed my book. And I also did the illustrations for my book. And if you would like to purchase a copy, there's some on the table over there. So in honor of my family's connection to Angel Island, I thought I would write about my mother and tell in my reimagination of her voice what happened when she came here as my father's sister, because the 1882 Chinese exclusion law did not allow laborers to bring in their wives. So she had to be an auntie to my three older sisters. And the Chinese that I am using is Hui Sanhua, which is what we call in our dialect, Pu Honghua means a very casual way of speaking, and the poem is called Gilmore, Call Me Auntie. On Angel Island, near the open road, a distance from Ifao, San Francisco, the ocean billows. I think of you, my Gimsan husband. Our daughters and I have traveled a long way to be with you. We are latched behind barbed wire, soldiers with guns here. Second daughter shivers. She asks, what has she done wrong? What do I tell her? I worry. Will we answer the questions correctly? In Fakigwa, America, I am your sister, not your wife. Shh. I warn our daughters. Mogongla, Mogongla, don't tell, don't tell. Secret. Mo ham ngoi du mama, do not call me mother. Gel ngoi yi, call me auntie. And my second poem, in April of 1940 in Oakland, Chinatown, my father was shot by a relative. There were 4 bullets shot at him. 3 entered his body. 1 was stopped by a watch that we used to have, but a burglar came to my brother's house and stole it. My mother, instead of tending to my father when he was shot, wore her slippers and her apron and ran out of the house to chase the assailant. My 2 sisters, Nellie and Leslie, followed her. I was a baby in the house. What I remember has been told to me. And so I imagine my mother saying this as she ran down the streets of Chinatown. Ay ya! Ki Lin Fua! A bing bok a bing for a ba ba. Kiu Menga, Kiu Menga. Oh no, what suffering! Bing Fok shot Baba. Save him, save him. My father did not die. And the next poem I have, my mother and father came from the south of China, and at the time they were married, there was no such concept of love in a marriage. Parents chose the wives and husbands for one another. My mother was my father's second wife. My dad was here in America working, and he had to return to China to meet my mother. So this poem I have written is called Akim Sam Hak, and it is in 3 voices. First my mother's, then my father's, and then the grandmother I never knew. Mama, my mother. I look at the man my mama chose, my husband to be, whom I have never seen. Dressed in a dark suit, shiny black shoes, he is a Gimsan Hak who toiled for years. Far flung across the sea from our homeland. Now that he needs to wed again, he comes to Ilang, our village, because his mama picked me. I will marry him, become his second wife. Oh, he's nervous. Sweat beads on his forehead. He is handsome, but I did not choose him. His right eye is smaller than the left. His body odor is different from the dung perfumed men who toil in our fields. When I marry him, I will live in Gimsan, away from my mama, whose wispy hair grows white and thin, whose bones are flooded with aches, who gives me scarce meat. When I marry, my belly will be filled. I will collect cow dung no more, pluck rice stalk no more, stuff rice straw in the smoking can no more. The voice of my father, Baba, my father. I look at the woman my mama chose, my wife to be, from the neighboring village of Ilang. I did not choose this woman. Can she give me a son? I need a son to carry my surname G to the next generation. Will she care for my first child, a daughter whose mother has passed? Will she bring me comfort, caressed by heart? In the sultry heat of this day, she dares not look at me for long. I see her three-corner eyes, slam gok ngan, small nose, drooping shoulders, calloused hands, large feet hidden in embroidered slippers. Will she be still in my arms, tender to my touch? In Gimsan, our life there will be arduous, our days long. Now the voice of my grandmother, Pupu, my mother's mother. I look at the handsome man I chose for my winsome, raven-haired daughter, who at the age of 21 still collects cow dung near our adobe home in land the weary field god abandoned. Ngoy galeng nui, my beautiful daughter, I found a Gimsan Hak for you. I have lived my life in this desolate land. Now you will live yours far away in Gimsan, where I hear that their streets are paved with gold. You will collect cow dung no more, wet your feet no more, pluck rice stalks no more, stuff rice straw no more. Feast now on your last grains of rice with me. I grew up in Oakland, Chinatown, and it was a small community where we lived and worked with other merchant families, other working class families. And the kids ran around, sometimes working, sometimes doing silly things. And being the youngest girl in my family, I was the tag-along. And we had our restaurant next to people my parents didn't like because, according to family legend, the owner of that restaurant stole food from us. We owned the regular restaurant. And what happened was that they didn't care if we became friends with the children of next door. So I became friends with the brothers. In Oakland, Chinatown long ago, my American-born sisters and I became friends with Timothy, Daniel, and Bobby, the sons of another restaurant family who worked next door to our restaurant on Webster Street. Our parents were partners once when they co-owned the restaurant known as Harry's Cafe. After a falling out, my father opened Great China Restaurant next door. Their broken relationship, however, did not interfere with our friendship with the boys. Using a crunched-up milk carton and a wooden tennis racket, we played baseball on Webster Street. One time, I batted the milk carton so hard, it broke the restaurant's neon sign. We chased one another in games of tag, threw Boy Scout knives on dirt mounds to take imaginary land from one another in imitation of World War II battles. We played these games in front of our family's restaurants. Sometimes I sat on our stoop with Doreen Jones, the boy's cousin who was also the daughter of Harry's Cafe's waitress. I liked Doreen because she always wore blue jeans, never fluffy dresses. One day, Daniel, the middle brother, plopped on the stoop of our restaurant, holding a paper napkin. I cozied up to him. "Want to learn to fold?" he asked. I nodded, a rapt audience of one. As Daniel started to fold and bend, I paid close attention. His hands moved fast, creasing a bend here, an angle here. His crisp folds were mysterious. What wonders would he unfold? Suddenly, my attention wandered to our restaurant, where my job was to put napkins in the middle holder, and as customers reached, I watched them now pull several from the container I had filled. I recall a man wiping traces of syrup and butter stains from his mouth after eating my mother's fluffy golden pancake. Suddenly, Daniel nudged me. "Paying attention?" I returned to the present moment and nodded. "Here's how you make a fold," he instructed, his hands and fingers weaving together like those of a magician. "Awed," I whispered. "Finish yet?" Daniel continued to sculpt. Suddenly 2 mounds were formed. "There," he grinned, pushing the mounds out in front of his teenage chest. A paper bra. And I will finish with this poem. I did not always get along with my mother. You don't want to hear that part of the story. Before I published this book, I thought it was time for me to forgive her. That's not too bad since I turned 80 last year. I carried my grudge against her for a long time. Not healthy, but I did it. And so I thought I should invite her to come back into my good graces. Mama, if I lived on a star, I would flash celestial energy, shoot bolts of love to you, surround you with sweet words. I denied you when you were alive because bitterness clouded my heart. I would plant swaying bamboo in the forest of your life so that when the wind blew, you would love me and your other Juxing daughters, whom you said tethered you to suffering for the reason that we were born female. But then you wisely, with your peasant wisdom, told me I have Hong Sui, good karma. I do, Mama. My life is rich. To balance the many banquets of hardship you lived through, I would serve you platters of sweetmeats. When you came to this country, you could not be who you were born to be. Assuming a false identity that Baba bought, you came as a paper sister. Later, you had to marry a man in name only, another man to make your American-born children legal Americans, because the U.S. immigration law prohibited Chinese men, like my Baba, from bringing wives to this new land that did not want Chinese to settle here. When I was 1.5 years old, a relative nearly fatally shot Baba, blood splattering the living room curtain in our Victorian home on Harrison Street in Oakland, Chinatown. You courageously chased the shooter onto the streets, not worried that he still had his weapon. You bolted from our house, my sisters Nellie and Leslie following you, your apron loosely tied over your house dress, brocaded slippers barely supporting your hasty step. You squeak, Gilmore! Gilmore! Loosely interpreted, save his life. Save his life. Meaning your husband, who lay bleeding on the living room floor. 2 men heard you. They tackled the fleeing assailant, held him until police came. Mama, come live on the star with me now.